Of the more than 900,000 islands in the world, only about 16,000 are actually inhabited. These islands vary immensely in their geographical characteristics. It is truly remarkable how some people have carved out a place to call home on the tiniest, most remote slices of land you could imagine. So for today's video, we're going to count down the top 15 smallest islands in the world that people actually live on. Starting with number 15, Gospod Skerpela, Montenegro. Alright, Gospod Skerpela, which translates to mean Our Lady of the Rocks, is a tiny man-made island that's in the Bay of Kotor in Montenegro. This unique place holds a culturally significant role in Montenegro, something that can be traced back centuries. It's dedicated to the Virgin Mary. Legend says that the island was created by seamen who, over hundreds of years, placed stones and rocks at this spot, with the first island starting to form in the 1400s. The tradition continues to this day, and local fishermen, along with visitors, gather to drop stones into the bay during an annual event known as Festanada. Now, on the island is the Church of Our Lady of the Rocks, which is a beautiful Baroque-style structure adorned with intricate frescoes, a stunning altar, and a treasury filled with valuable artifacts. Visitors can explore the church and its museum to learn about the island's history and the legends surrounding it. Just one caretaker lives permanently on the island to oversee the structures and take care of any problems. But through history, it's been home to groups of fishermen and members of the clergy, all of whom wanted to be close to a place that is now such an integral part of the way of life in the region. Number 14. Loreto, Italy. Lake Iseo, a stunning part of the Lombardy region of Italy, where the water is crystal clear and the medieval towns along its shores are surrounded by mountains. But the most magical thing about this place is a tiny island known as Loreto, almost looking like a page out of a fairy tale book that's come to life. Evidence has been found of people living there as long ago as 1238, but it took on its current charm and character when in the 15th century a group of Clarice nuns bought it and built a convent. Over the following centuries, various different owners took over and added their own touches to Loreto, including its main castle, a series of turrets, 2 lighthouses, a marina, and a collection of exotic trees and plants. Rumor has it that George Clooney once tried to buy the island, but the current owners, who are from nearby, refused his offer and have instead pledged to live there for the rest of their lives. With the exception of rare events that are hosted on the island, it's off limits, unless you're expressly invited by the owners. So this is one place that you'll have to admire from afar. Number 13. Saba Island, the Netherlands Antilles. Saba Island, which is part of the Netherlands Antilles, is the smallest territory in the Caribbean. It's known for its unspoiled beauty, its lush landscapes, and unique charm. This small volcanic island, which has the nickname of Unspoiled Queen of the Caribbean, is very different from the other islands. Despite covering an area of just 5 square miles or about 13 square kilometers, its landscape is varied, and the thing that stands out the most as you approach it is Mount Scenery, which is actually the highest point in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Hiking to its summit through dense rainforests is one of the main attractions for visitors on the island, who are then rewarded with spectacular panoramic views of the Caribbean Sea. There's a permanent population of fewer than 2,000 people, making it the smallest territory by population in the Americas, and there are just 2 towns, the Bottom, which is the capital, and Windward Side. These and several smaller settlements are precariously positioned around Mount Scenery, which is an active volcano that last erupted in the 17th century. This does, though, create a number of hot springs in the area, which are popular with locals and tourists, and has made the land so fertile that there's a cloud forest of which supports a large number of plant and animal species, many of which aren't found anywhere else in the world. Number 12. Pontokonisi, Greece. Pontokonisi, which means Mouse Island, is a tiny islet that's in the Ionian Sea just off the coast of Corfu in Greece. The name originates from its distinctive shape, which resembles a mouse's head and body when viewed from a distance, and it covers an area of just 2.5 acres. It's a small, lush island with dense vegetation, and the only building there is a solitary, charming church known as the Vlacherna Monastery. The original structure on the site was first built in the 11th or 12th centuries, but the one that stands there now is a 17th century monastery that's pristinely white, with a red-tiled roof and perched at the edge of the islet where it's connected to the mainland by a narrow causeway. At any time, there are a couple of monks living in the monastery, and it's open to visitors to explore the structure and to take in the incredible views of the surrounding region. What's possibly the most surprising thing about such a small islet, though, is its influence in ancient culture, particularly to the ancient Greeks. It was mentioned in a number of stories from the time, but most famously, according to mythology, it's actually the petrified ship of Odysseus, which means it was turned to stone by the sea god Poseidon, an act that brought an end to his journey in the Odyssey. Today, the islet's natural beauty and historical significance make it a popular destination for tourists and locals. It's the perfect place for those looking for a peaceful retreat among the backdrop of the Ionian Sea. Number 11. Dangar Island, Australia. Located in the Hawkesbury River, just a short distance from Sydney, is Dangar Island, which is one of the area's best-kept secrets, something the locals would prefer that remains that way. Accessible only by boat, Dangar Island has no cars, making it a calm, peaceful, and eco-friendly place where visitors and residents instead rely on bicycles and footpaths to get around. All supplies come in via the ferry, and when deliveries are made, you'll often see residents loading everything into wheelbarrows to take them back to their homes. With vegetation including native bushland and vibrant gardens, it's a haven for birdwatchers and nature enthusiasts. In all, it covers an area of just 1/10 of a square mile, or about 2.9 square kilometers, so you can walk across it in just 5 minutes. And there's a permanent population of 303 people, according to the most recent census. It is an incredibly tight-knit community, and one that has all the modern conveniences you'd expect of a home on the mainland. One of the most popular places for locals and visitors is the Dangar Island Cafe. And there's also a bowling club that welcomes everyone, but the real attraction of the place are the stunning waterfront views and a coastline that has a number of secluded beaches and picturesque spots that are ideal for swimming, picnicking, and kayaking. Number 10. Mont Saint-Michel, France. Mont Saint-Michel is an island commune and medieval abbey that's in Normandy in France. This UNESCO World Heritage Site is one of the most iconic and recognizable landmarks in France and attracts millions of visitors from around the globe each year. The 17-acre island of Mont Saint-Michel sits atop a rocky mound in the midst of vast tidal flats around half nautical mile from the mainland. Historically, this was the ideal position for an abbey because it was easily accessible for pilgrims during low tide, but easily defendable too, particularly as the waters began to rise around it. This strategic advantage meant, for example, that it was never conquered during the 100 Years' War, despite repeated attempts by the English, and once famously saw a small French garrison fend off a full-scale attack with minimal casualties. Amazingly, the abbey is now more than 1,000 years old, and while primarily used as a place of worship, it was also used as a prison with spaces reserved for high-profile inmates, and not a single person is thought to have ever escaped. During the medieval period, pilgrims would trek across from France, Germany, England, and Italy to the abbey, and were known as Miquelets. With the water level varying by 46 feet or 14 meters between high tide and low tide, it was often called St. Michael and the Peril of the Sea, and it's still dangerous crossing today for those who choose to not make the journey by the more recently built causeway. Historical records also show the exact way the pilgrims would have taken, and you can follow their footsteps with a choice of 10 different long-distance hiking routes. The abbey is a blend of Romanesque and Gothic styles, showcasing intricate carvings, soaring arches, and ornate cloister. There's also the village of Mont Saint-Michel, which is predominantly on the mainland and is a picturesque labyrinth of narrow cobblestone streets, medieval buildings, quaint shops, and eateries. While it is mainly a tourist site now, the latest census showed that 27 people live in the structure on the island on a permanent basis, with around a third of them being monks or nuns. But there have been times in the past when this number has exceeded 1,000. Number 9. Santa Cruz del Islote, Colombia. Often said to be the most densely populated island in the world, Santa Cruz del Islote is part of the San Bernardo archipelago, which can be found off the Caribbean coast of Colombia. Measuring just 2.4 acres in size, this island is home to between 500 and 800 people, all of whom have adapted to the compact living conditions by constructing multi-story homes, allowing several generations of families to coexist on this tiny piece of land. Originally, the island was even smaller, and it was only in the 1860s that fishermen first started to live there. They brought in materials like seashells, coconut shells, and tree trunks and used them to expand the size. And more people started moving there, both because of the plentiful stocks of fish in the surrounding reef and the fact that it has no mosquitoes. Life on the island is still centered around fishing, but there are other jobs available, like you'd find in any other community. Amazingly, residents have created a network of homes, schools, and even a soccer field, and also welcome visitors to show them their unique way of life. It is an opportunistic society, and that's even where the island's name came from. For a long time, it wasn't actually called anything because it was seen as too small to be worth it. But one day, a tide washed up a cement cross, so the residents took it and installed it at the center of the island. and then it became known as Santa Cruz del Islote, which translates to mean Holy Cross of the Islet. Number 8. Magingo Island, Lake Victoria. With a surface area of 23,000 square miles, or almost 60,000 square kilometers, Lake Victoria is the largest lake in Africa and the biggest tropical lake in the world. It's so big that it's actually split between 3 countries, and it, of course, supports a thriving ecosystem with countless different animal species. Within the lake, there are almost 1,000 islands, but the most famous is Magingo Island, which is a half-acre island in the Kenyan part of the lake, close to the border with Uganda. Originally, it was covered in weeds and snakes. The first people started living there in 1991, and there are now believed to be around 130 residents, making it one of the most densely populated places on Earth. It's got 4 pubs, several brothels, and a pharmacy. The majority of people that live there do so because of the access to rich fishing areas, and it's actually one of the biggest sources of fish for Kenya. Life on Magingo Island is, however, challenging due to limited space and basic amenities. Residents live in close quarters, and the island lacks a regular supply of fresh water and electricity. The residents here, though, have adapted to their unique circumstances, relying on rainwater collection and generators for their daily needs. In recent years, particularly after it rose to prominence due to a dispute between Kenya and Uganda over its ownership, it's also become somewhat of a visitor destination for people who want to see this unique island for themselves. And it acts as a great example of how valuable formations like Lake Victoria are to supporting communities and providing food. While the dispute between the countries has now been resolved with the agreement that the island is in Kenya, but most of the fishing waters near it are in Uganda, the future life on Magingo Island remains uncertain. Kenyan workers continue to catch fish from Ugandan waters, and as food becomes more scarce, it's feared that this could be more than enough for hostilities to resume. Number 7. Visovac, Croatia. Visovac is a picturesque island located in the heart of Croatia, located within the serene waters of the Krka River in the country's Dalmatian region. The region is part of the Krka National Park, which is a place that's known for its natural beauty, and it's no wonder that monks wanted to live there. The first religious structure was built on the island in the 1300s by Augustinian monks, and it was further enlarged by the following century by Franciscan monks who had fled Bosnia when it was invaded by the Ottoman Empire. The structure that you see today was built in the 18th century, but there are still remains of the original monastery, and because it's so old, there's a fascinating collection of artifacts such as ancient manuscripts and extremely rare books. The island itself covers an area of 5 acres, and with its position in the river is only accessible by boat. It remains home to a small community of Franciscan monks who have maintained the monastery and its surroundings for centuries, and their commitment to preserving the island's natural beauty and historical treasures is evident wherever you look. They gladly welcome visitors to look around the perfectly groomed grounds and learn more about their history and the life on the island, and it's one of the must-see sites to go to if you're ever traveling through that part of Croatia. Number 6. Umananda, India. Umananda Island, which is named after the Hindu goddess Parvati, or alternatively known as the Peacock Island because of its shape, is the smallest of all the islands in the Brahmaputra River, as it passes through the city of Guwahati in the northeastern Indian state of Assam. According to local legend, it's believed that Lord Shiva, the husband of Parvati, resided on this island during his time in exile, and as such, the Umananda Temple, which is dedicated to Lord Shiva, is the most visited place on the island. Built in the 17th century by King Gadahar Singha, the temple is a stunning example of local architecture. Known for combining separate styles, it's a particularly busy place during the festival of Shivarati, when tens of thousands of pilgrims travel to the temple of the island to receive a blessing from Lord Shiva. The temple was first built in 1694, and it's been a religious focus ever since. In 1867, it was almost completely destroyed by an earthquake, but funds were soon raised to completely rebuild it, with a project that was overseen by a local merchant who also used the opportunity to add a symbology throughout its interior. There are also a number of statues inside, including a series of idols that represent 10 other Hindu gods other than Shiva. It's still an important part of the religion, but it's also a fascinating place to learn and understand more about Hindu beliefs. The permanent population of monks ensures that every question you have can be answered, but it's not necessarily the most easily accessible of places, as once you've left the ferry, you need to climb more than 150 steps to reach the temple. Number 5. Easdale, Scotland. Easdale is a picturesque and historic island that's off the west coast of Scotland, near to the town of Oban. This tiny island, which covers an area of just 62 hectares, is part of the Slate Islands group in the Inner Hebrides, but despite its small size, it's been a long and important part of the local economy. This is because it was once an integral part of the British slate industry, where high-quality slate was extracted for use as roofing materials and various other construction purposes. It was so popular that it was exported around the world, and you can still see homes as far away as Melbourne in Australia and Nova Scotia in Canada that have Easdale slate on their roofs. In the 19th century, Easdale had a bustling community with a population that peaked at around 500, and there were 7 quarries, some of which had reached depths of up to 300 feet or about 90 meters below sea level. The island's successes stopped suddenly after a storm in 1850 flooded the island, and there was no way for workers to drain the water. The mining operations stopped virtually overnight, and while surface slate was still extracted up until the 1950s, the quarries are now full of water, and they supported a vibrant ecosystem with a huge bird population. Further remnants of the slate industry, including the workers' cottages, can still be seen today, providing a glimpse into the island's past. But the community of more than 500 fell to as little as 4 in the 1960s and is now around 60 people, making it the smallest and least inhabited island in the Inner Hebrides. The main settlement on the island, the village of Elenabike, is a collection of charming cottages and stone-built houses that are tightly clustered around a small harbor, and the island is now famous for its tranquil atmosphere and natural beauty that make it an ideal place for those seeking a peaceful retreat. It is, of course, a haven for birdwatchers and wildlife enthusiasts, with opportunities to spot seabirds, seals, and otters in their natural habitats. Despite its small population, Easdale has a strong sense of community, and it hosts a variety of events throughout the year, including the renowned World Stone Skimming Championships. This competition draws in participants from far and wide who attempt to skim flat stones across the water's surface of one of the former quarries, often resulting in impressive distances. Now, with several bed and breakfasts and restaurants, the owners of the island are trying to develop a tourism industry, leveraging the natural beauty and unusual history of the place. Access is, however, limited because you can get there only by ferry, which only operates in calm weather and only a couple of times each week. Number 4. Little Brewster Island, United States. Located within Boston Harbor in Massachusetts, Little Brewster Island is just 8.5 acres in size, but it's home to one of America's most iconic landmarks, the Boston Light, which was the first lighthouse built in the United States. It is the nation's oldest continually operating lighthouse and the only one to still be permanently occupied by a member of the United States Coast Guard. The original structure was first built in 1716 but was destroyed by the British in 1776, so a new one was built in 1783 to the same height of 75 feet and was subsequently heightened to 98 feet in 1856 with the addition of a new lantern room. The Boston Light has played a crucial role in guiding ships safely through the treacherous waters of Boston Harbor for centuries, and while it was automated in the late 1990s, a member of the Coast Guard lives there to ensure it's working properly and to give guided tours to visitors. The only way to access the island is through a tour or boat trip that's organized by the Boston Harbor Islands National and State Park, which provides a unique opportunity to step back in time and explore the island's historical sites while taking in the stunning coastal scenery. Beyond the lighthouse, Little Brewster Island has a rugged coastline that's dotted with tidal pools, rocky shores, and wildflowers, and is an important nesting ground for various seabirds, including terns and herring gulls. Other parts of the island were also once inhabited, with stories of pirates, shipwrecks, and colonial-era conflicts. The island was strategically important during the American Revolution, serving as a lookout point and military outpost, with many of these events documented in the lighthouse's museum. The only time in history that the light was ever extinguished was during the Second World War because of fears it would be target for attack. And even today, with modern navigational techniques, it's an important navigational landmark that flashes a white light once every 10 seconds, and it's visible from 31 miles away. Despite being designated as a National Historic Landmark in 1964, its future operation is uncertain, though, because fewer vessels travel this route into Boston Harbor and instead use the North Channel because of their size, where they're warned about the rocky outcrops by the Graves Light on a different island. Number 3. Saguaro, Cook Islands. Named after British explorer James Cook, who explored the South Pacific in the 1770s, the Cook Islands are a chain of 15 islands that make up one of the most remote countries on the planet. One of the islands, called Saguaro, is virtually an untouched atoll, and itself is located approximately 800 miles to the north of Rarotonga, which is the largest of the Cook Islands. With a land area of about 3.8 square miles, it's made up of a series of islets that are connected by beaches and reefs around a central lagoon. It's named after the Russian ship Suvorov, which explored the area in the 19th century, and its history is intertwined with tales of shipwrecks and adventurous sailors seeking refuge on its shores. In fact, there's plenty of evidence to suggest people have intermittently lived there throughout history, including pirates, who are believed to have used it as a hideout. But when it was rediscovered by the Russian ship, it was empty, and today its population fluctuates between 1 and 2 people who work as caretakers for the island and to monitor the wildlife because it's been designated as a nature reserve. The role of caretaker is re-advertised every 5 years, and they are taken on this barge along with 6 months' worth of food and stay there until they're replaced. Outside of the official supply trip, the only other way to reach the island is by private yacht or chartered vessel. And even then, you need a permit to land, which is quite difficult to obtain. These restrictions means it's one of the best preserved tropical islands in the world, and its natural beauty is simply breathtaking. The atoll is surrounded by crystal-clear turquoise waters teeming with marine life, and the coral reefs that surround the island are alive with vibrant corals, tropical fish, and a thriving marine world. Those fortunate enough to swim there are soon joined by sharks, whales, sea turtles, and schools of colorful fish, something you'd rarely find anywhere else. The beaches are stunning too, with powdery white sands that stretches for miles, and they're dotted with coconut palms and lush tropical vegetation. The land features are less developed than those in the water though, because it's all low-lying and susceptible to being flooded when storms pass over. Number 2. Corvo, Azores. Corvo is the smallest and northernmost island in the Azores archipelago, which is an autonomous region of Portugal that's in the North Atlantic Ocean. With its rugged terrain, lush landscapes, and welcoming community, it is truly a unique place. But covering an area of just 6.6 square miles and a population of just 384 people, it's as remote and isolated as you can get. The island is located approximately 930 miles to the west of mainland Portugal, but this detachment has helped preserve the island's natural beauty and cultural heritage. The village of Vila de Corvo is the only settlement there, and setting foot in it is like journeying back in time, with colorful houses, cobblestone streets, and a laid-back atmosphere from a long-lost age. Beyond the town, the island is made up of dramatic cliffs, lush valleys, and picturesque vineyards. And at its center lies Caldeirão, a massive volcanic crater that collapsed in on itself during the last eruption around 430,000 years ago. The Caldeirão is a haven for hikers and nature enthusiasts, offering numerous trails that lead to breathtaking viewpoints, with one of the most popular expeditions being the trek to the summit of Mount Gordo, where you can enjoy panoramic views of the island and the surrounding ocean. The economy on the island relies mainly on agriculture, particularly the cultivation of wheat and corn, which grows well there because of the fertile soil and the temperate climate. Vineyards also grow grapes for a one-of-a-kind type of wine, and fishermen also do very well from the large numbers of fish in the surrounding waters. The island's virtually completely self-sufficient, with the excess produce sent back to the mainland, and it's actually surprisingly accessible, with Corvo Airport serving as a link to the island and connecting it to the other more populated Azorean islands, where you can transfer to the mainland Portugal if you need to. Ferries also provide transportation, but take a long time to reach the islands from Portugal. For those with an exploring spirit, then it is worth the effort though, because there are plenty of opportunities for swimming, snorkeling, and bird watching. Corvo is an important stopping point for migratory birds, and the cliffs along the shore are breeding grounds for numerous seabird species, including Cory shearwaters and European storm petrels. Number 1. Just Room Enough Island, New York. Just Room Enough Island, which is also known as Hub Island, is a tiny private island that's in the Thousand Islands region of the St. Lawrence River in upstate New York. This small piece of land, covering just 1/13 of an acre, has earned its distinctive name for a very clear reason. It's literally just room enough for a single house and a small yard, and is easily the smallest island in the world that's inhabited. Originally purchased by the Sizeland family in 1950s as a vacation retreat, they built a small cottage on the rocky outcrop, and now the same cottage, complete with a small yard and a white picket fence, occupies nearly the entire landmass, leaving only a narrow strip of space between the house and the water's edge. It's a perfect example of whimsical human nature to see how small of an island someone could actually live on. And unsurprisingly, the story of Just Room Enough Island has captured the imagination of many people, making it a popular destination for curious travelers exploring the Thousand Islands region. Its unique size and the illusion of isolation created by the surrounding water make it a charming spot for visitors to photograph and admire from boat tours on the St. Lawrence. Just Room Enough Island is private property, so you can only set foot on it if you're expressly invited by the owners. The surrounding area offers plenty of recreational opportunities for tourists. It's accessible only by boat, and there's various boat tours available in the area that provide a close-up look at the island along with many of the others in the river. And travelers can choose from guided tours that offer historical insights about the region or rent their own boats to explore the islands at their own pace. The Thousand Islands region is famous for its stunning natural beauty, including lush forests, clear waters, and wildlife. So while you're there, you can explore the nearby Wellesley Island State Park, enjoy boating and kayaking on the river, or take in scenic drives along the picturesque Route 12. It's Just Room Enough Island that'll stand out the most though, because from some angles, it looks just like a floating house. The more you explore, the more you'll see why the Sizeland family chose this particular location in an attempt to establish themselves as part of high society in New York. Many of the other islands are privately owned too, and have vast residences on them like Bolt Castle on Hart Island. But these of course are far larger and more expensive. In the same way that someone may try to buy a place close to the Hamptons to be able to boast to their friends, Just Room Enough Island was the result of the 1950s equivalent. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you to our channel members.